In the modern world, pregnancy is carefully monitored. Ultrasounds, hospitals, doctors, sterile conditions, pain relief, emergency surgery if anything goes wrong. But if you were pregnant in prehistoric times, tens of thousands of years ago, none of that existed. Pregnancy was not just a natural part of life, it was one of the most dangerous and uncertain phases a woman could face. The simple fact is this: many women didn't survive it. In prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies, being pregnant meant balancing survival with the constant threat of death, high risk of miscarriage, malnutrition, infections, physical exhaustion, accidents, predators, childbirth complications. Every pregnancy was a life-threatening gamble. Researchers estimate that in prehistoric times, up to 20% of pregnancies ended in miscarriage. Maternal mortality rates during childbirth may have been as high as 1 in 10. Infant mortality before age 1 could reach 30% to 50%. Modern medicine simply didn't exist, and the body faced brutal odds from the moment of conception. In small bands of hunter-gatherers, reproduction was essential for the group's survival. With high infant mortality rates, women often became pregnant repeatedly. Some women gave birth every 2 to 4 years, depending on breastfeeding, nutrition, and group needs. Over their lifetime, prehistoric women may have experienced 8 to 12 pregnancies, many of which would not end with a healthy child. Each pregnancy brought additional physical risks that accumulated with age. Prehistoric people had no concept of genetics, hormones, infection, germ theory, blood loss. Fertility was seen as both natural and mysterious. In some cultures, fertility rituals, charms, and spiritual beliefs surrounded pregnancy, but real medical knowledge was absent. Complications were often viewed as fate or punishment. Human pregnancy is uniquely dangerous because of our own evolution. Human babies have enormous heads to support large, complex brains. The human pelvis narrowed for upright walking. The result: human childbirth is far more difficult and dangerous than for nearly any other mammal. Being pregnant didn't remove women from daily survival duties. Hunting, foraging, processing food, carrying heavy loads, moving camp, enduring cold, rain, fending off predators and rival groups. The dangers were constant. There were no protected maternity wards or restful maternity leave. A pregnant woman in the Stone Age worked right up until labor. Despite the harshness, prehistoric pregnancy wasn't entirely isolated. Female relatives, elders, and other mothers likely formed support systems. Knowledge of birthing positions, herbal remedies, and emergency care was passed down orally. The entire group had a survival interest in protecting pregnant women. They represented the next generation. Still, even with this support, the risks remained overwhelming. This was the brutal reality that began the moment a woman conceived. And this was only the start. Next, we'll explore how conception, fertility, and constant family pressure shaped prehistoric pregnancies, and why women had little choice but to risk it all. Again and again. In prehistoric times, pregnancy didn't start with choice, it started with necessity. For the group, reproduction was survival. Without new children, small hunter-gatherer bands could easily disappear within 1 or 2 generations. Prehistoric populations were small, sometimes 20 to 50 individuals per group. Child mortality was extremely high. Even with multiple pregnancies, many children died before age 5 due to infection, malnutrition, accidents, disease, predator attacks. As a result, each woman needed to produce multiple surviving children just to keep the population stable. Anthropologists estimate that for a prehistoric group to maintain its size, each woman may have needed to bear 4 to 6 surviving children over her lifetime. But because nearly half of all infants and young children died early, women often had 8 to 12 total pregnancies in their lives. This continuous cycle of conception, pregnancy, birth, and recovery defined the lives of prehistoric women from adolescence to the end of their reproductive years. Girls reach sexual maturity much earlier than most modern people realize. In well-nourished populations today, puberty often begins between 10 to 13 years old. In prehistoric times, nutrition, stress, and environmental factors likely affected the timing, but by mid-teens, most girls were physically capable of conceiving. Early pregnancy was common because shorter lifespans meant earlier reproduction. The group needed as many reproductive years as possible. A 14-year-old girl could easily become pregnant, even while she herself was still developing physically. Without modern birth control methods, prehistoric pregnancy cycles were determined almost entirely by nature. Long breastfeeding helped naturally space pregnancies. High physical activity levels sometimes delayed ovulation. Malnutrition or stress occasionally interrupted fertility. But once a woman's body returned to fertility, pregnancy could follow quickly. Multiple pregnancies close together added enormous physical strain. Malnutrition worsened with each pregnancy. Maternal mortality risk increased with each delivery. Cumulative exhaustion lowered resistance to infections. Even reaching full-term pregnancy was uncertain. Miscarriage rates may have ranged from 10% to 20% naturally, depending on nutritional deficiencies, physical overexertion, infections, genetic abnormalities, trauma. Without medical care, many miscarriages were fatal for both fetus and mother, especially in cases of retained tissue or hemorrhaging. Prehistoric people didn't understand reproduction biologically. Many early cultures developed myths and spiritual beliefs to explain fertility. Fertility gods and goddesses, moon cycle rituals, herbal fertility charms, sexual taboos, and fertility rites. Archaeologists have found figurines like the Venus of Willendorf, exaggerated female forms believed to symbolize fertility, health, and successful childbearing. Fertility wasn't just a biological function. It was sacred, mysterious, and sometimes terrifying. In many groups, a woman's primary role was reproduction. More children meant greater group survival. Women unable to conceive were sometimes devalued socially. The survival of the entire band depended on mothers producing future hunters, gatherers, and protectors. Women who struggled with fertility may have faced blame for bad luck, spiritual accusations, loss of status. These pressures added enormous psychological strain to physical risk. Pregnancy success wasn't only about the woman. Poor nutrition for the entire group weakened pregnancies. Low genetic diversity in small bands sometimes increased birth defects. Disease outbreaks affected pregnant women disproportionately. Group-wide survival challenges impacted every new pregnancy indirectly. Male roles in conception and fertility were primarily biological, but also social. In most bands, pair-bonded relationships formed, but lifelong exclusive monogamy was not universal. Males provided food, protection, and social support. Some anthropologists suggest flexible mating systems existed, helping ensure genetic diversity and social bonding. What mattered most was that pregnant women had enough support to carry pregnancies successfully. The grandmother hypothesis suggests that older women past childbearing age played key roles, assisting with child rearing, foraging, and food preparation, teaching survival skills. By freeing up younger women from constant childcare, grandmothers increased the survival chances of newborns and allowed younger mothers to recover faster between pregnancies. This cooperation may have been a critical evolutionary advantage. For most prehistoric women, adolescence marked the start of pregnancy risk. Successive pregnancies continued into their 30s or 40s. Every birth increased risk of long-term injury or death. Many women spent 20-plus years nearly continuously pregnant, nursing, or recovering. This was the harsh fertility system that prehistoric women faced. High demand, no protection, endless danger, and once a pregnancy reached full term, The most dangerous phase was still to come, giving birth itself. Pregnancy was only possible because the mother's body could endure it. But in the brutal environment of prehistoric life, every part of a woman's body was pushed to its absolute limits. From the moment of conception, survival was never guaranteed for the mother or the child. In modern pregnancy, women carefully monitor folic acid, iron levels, protein intake, vitamin D, calcium, and more. In prehistoric times, none of this was controlled. Nutrition was entirely dependent on what was available that season, what the group could successfully gather or hunt, the knowledge of edible and poisonous plants at certain times of the year. Food could be abundant, berries ripening in summer, roots and tubers ready for harvest, game animals migrating into the region. But at other times, the group may have faced near starvation. The growing fetus demanded constant resources. Calories, protein for tissue development, iron for blood production, calcium for bone growth, fats for brain development. When nutrients ran low, the mother's body prioritized the fetus, draining her own reserves dangerously low. Severe malnutrition often led to miscarriage, stillbirth, low birth weight infants, higher maternal mortality, and yet prehistoric women were frequently malnourished simply because the environment provided no guarantees. Protein and fat were essential for both mother and fetus, but hunting was difficult. Large game was not always available. Hunting success rates were highly unpredictable, even for skilled groups. When successful, animals provided high-protein meat, bone marrow, organ meats, animal fat. Pregnant women likely received preferential portions of organ meats when available, but scarcity was common. Plant foods offered important calories but lacked key nutrients. Many were low in protein. Some lacked essential fatty acids. Certain wild plants required processing to remove toxins. High-fiber diets also made calorie extraction inefficient compared to fat-rich meat. Pregnant women surviving on plants alone faced higher anemia risk, protein energy malnutrition, calcium deficiency, leading to brittle bones and dental problems occasionally. Groups accessed extremely high-calorie wild foods. Honey, high-fat seeds, and nuts. These rare finds temporarily boosted energy, but they were unpredictable and seasonal. Many prehistoric women likely suffered from iron deficiency anemia, calcium deficiency, iodine deficiency, vitamin D deficiency. Any one of these could endanger both mother and child. Being pregnant in prehistory didn't mean rest. Daily work included walking 5 to 10 miles per day for foraging, carrying gathered plants, firewood, and water, helping process food, digging tubers, avoiding predators, while moving across terrain. Pregnant women continued contributing as long as possible. There was no luxury of full rest. Carrying heavy loads while pregnant increased risks of miscarriage from abdominal strain, falls, and injuries, early labor. As pregnancy progressed, a woman's center of gravity shifted forward dramatically. In rough prehistoric terrain, this increased risk of falls on uneven ground, slips while foraging or walking near rivers and cliffs, lower back injuries from constant heavy lifting. Falling late in pregnancy could lead to severe injury or fetal loss instantly. Pregnant women were more vulnerable to predators. Slower escapability, reduced agility, heavier breathing, and louder movement. Prehistoric environments hosted threats like lions, wolves, hyenas, bears, saber-toothed cats. Groups provided safety, but isolation during foraging was highly dangerous, especially for pregnant women. Pregnancy weakens immune defenses to protect the fetus, ironically making mothers more susceptible to malaria. Parasitic worms, gastrointestinal infections, respiratory diseases, sepsis from minor injuries. Even mild infections could escalate rapidly in the absence of antibiotics or sterile wound care. Any injury carried amplified consequences while pregnant. Blood loss affected both mother and fetus. Stress responses triggered contractions or miscarriage. Infections spread more aggressively. A simple cut while cutting tubers or butchering meat could lead to deadly consequences. Pregnancy could trigger destructive feedback cycles. Pregnancy drains nutrients, gives weakens the mother, gives reduces. Ability to forage gives leads to further malnutrition, gives increases miscarriage or mortality risk. Without consistent community support, many pregnancies would spiral into fatal outcomes. The physical risks weren't the only hardship. Anxiety over group survival, fear of complications, knowledge of previous pregnancy losses, watching others die in childbirth, caring for surviving children while pregnant again. The psychological burden of pregnancy was enormous and constant. Fire played an indirect but critical role in survival. Cooked food reduced infection risk. Heating increased nutrient absorption. Warmth protected from cold-related pregnancy losses. Boiling water reduced waterborne diseases. Fire protected mothers and infants at night from predators. Groups that mastered fire improved pregnancy survival dramatically, but fire skills took generations to develop. And yet, even after surviving all these nutritional, physical, and environmental threats, prehistoric women faced the most dangerous moment of all, the birth itself. In modern times, pregnancy often comes with reduced workloads, medical checkups, prenatal vitamins, and plenty of rest. In prehistoric times, rest was not an option. Every pregnant woman had to survive inside a brutally demanding daily routine, exposed to physical exhaustion, unpredictable environments, and constant life or death dangers. In today's world, pregnancies are carefully monitored by trimesters. First trimester, highest miscarriage risk. Second trimester, more stability. Third trimester, heavy monitoring and preparation for delivery. In the Stone Age, pregnancy offered no such structured safety windows. Dangers existed in every phase of pregnancy. Early miscarriage could be triggered by minor stress, infection, or injury. Mid-pregnancy could be interrupted by malnutrition, accidents, or trauma. Late pregnancy posed high risks of stillbirth, premature labor, and complications without any medical support. Every prehistoric woman remained mobile throughout her pregnancy. Stone Age groups rarely stayed in one place for long. Food sources were seasonal. Animal migrations shifted constantly. Water sources could dry up or become contaminated. Predator threats required periodic relocation. Migration required walking 5 to 15 kilometers per day, often carrying personal items, foraged food, and sometimes toddlers. Even in late pregnancy, women walked long distances across uneven rocky terrain, muddy wetlands, snowy landscapes. Dense forests filled with insects, animals, and hidden dangers. A fall late in pregnancy could be catastrophic, but stopping wasn't an option. Gathering food was a core survival task for pregnant women. Daily foraging activities included digging up tubers and roots, collecting nuts and seeds, picking wild fruits and berries, harvesting edible leaves and shoots, cracking open shellfish, scavenging leftover animal bones for marrow. These tasks involve crouching, kneeling, bending, climbing, and repetitive physical strain while carrying the extra weight of pregnancy. Digging sticks were the main tool, simple sharpened wooden poles used for prying up edible plants from tough soil. Many tubers required intense labor to extract, clean, and cook. Failure to forage enough food could mean immediate starvation for the woman, her fetus, and her entire family. Pregnant foragers also faced constant risks of poisoning. Some wild tubers resembled toxic varieties. Certain mushrooms could kill with tiny doses. Berries that looked edible could contain neurotoxins. Only extensive experience passed down over generations kept these women alive while gathering food. A single mistake while identifying wild plants could mean the death of both mother and unborn child within hours. Even while simply gathering plants, prehistoric women faced constant encounters with dangerous wildlife. Venomous snakes hidden beneath rocks and logs, scorpions lurking in dry foliage. Large carnivores tracking nearby prey insects, carrying parasites or triggering allergic reactions. Aggressive herbivores that could trample a distracted forager, pregnant women slower. Heavier, less mobile, were highly vulnerable. Foragers often carried their harvests back to camp in woven fiber baskets or animal hide slings. Pregnant women may have balanced loads on their heads, backs, or sides. Carrying heavy loads while pregnant risked. Lower back injuries increased. Abdominal pressure, miscarriage, preterm labor, hernias. Yet, without carrying loads, women wouldn't contribute enough to keep the group fed, which threatened everyone's survival. Pregnant women often played key roles in maintaining fire, tending embers, collecting kindling, monitoring fuel supplies, managing cooking fires. Fire was absolutely critical. Cooked food was safer to eat. Warmth protected pregnant women from cold exposure. Fire kept predators at bay. But managing fire meant close proximity to open flames, increasing the risk of burns, smoke inhalation, and accidents. Pregnant women worked in every weather condition: cold rain that risked hypothermia, blistering sun that risked dehydration, freezing snow that froze extremities, high winds that damaged shelters in cold seasons. Frostbite could permanently damage limbs. In hot seasons, water scarcity could trigger rapid dehydration, which endangers both fetus and mother within hours. Pregnancy slowed women's ability to escape sudden predator attacks, climb trees for safety, defend themselves effectively. Apex predators included saber-toothed cats, lions, hyenas, wolves, bears, most. Pregnant women depended entirely on group members for protection while performing daily tasks. Even under these extreme risks, daily labor couldn't stop. Stone Age women adapted to heavy workloads by developing broad physical strength, strong core and pelvic muscles, endurance for long-distance travel, mental discipline to withstand exhaustion. Modern humans would be physically incapable of handling these daily demands, especially while pregnant. Without medicine, even minor pregnancy complications were deadly. High blood pressure, gestational diabetes, ectopic pregnancies, placental abruption, RH, incompatibility. Today, these conditions are manageable or preventable. In prehistory, any one of them almost always led to death. As pregnancy advanced, women dealt with rapid blood volume increase, swelling in legs and feet, breathing difficulties due to diaphragm compression, sciatic nerve pain, severe back strain. These changes further reduced mobility and stamina. The simple act of standing up or bending down became progressively harder as pregnancy advanced, but daily work didn't stop. Many women likely entered late pregnancy already weakened by iron deficiency, anemia, calcium depletion, vitamin shortages. Parasite infections. They faced labor already physically depleted, dramatically increasing risks of complications during delivery. In prehistoric life, there were no safety nets, no maternity leave, no specialized nutrition, no prenatal care. Every pregnant woman lived at the intersection of constant danger, exhaustion, and biological sacrifice. And even after enduring months of brutal physical strain, the most dangerous moment was still ahead: childbirth itself. After months of struggle, foraging while pregnant, walking for miles, avoiding predators, enduring malnutrition, and constant exhaustion, a prehistoric woman now faced the single most dangerous moment of her life: giving birth. In modern hospitals, births are monitored minute by minute. Fetal heart monitors, ultrasounds, epidurals, key sections, teams of trained specialists. In the Stone Age, none of this existed. Childbirth was raw, dangerous, painful, and often deadly for both mother and child. Human childbirth is uniquely difficult among all mammals, and it is entirely due to our own evolution. Large infant brain size. Modern newborns have extremely large heads. Narrow pelvic opening, Upright walking forced the human pelvis to evolve narrower and more rigid for stable locomotion. This combination created one of evolution's most precarious trade-offs. Big brain babies must pass through tight birth canals. In modern delivery rooms, most first-time labors last between 8 to 18 hours on average. In prehistoric times, prolonged labor was far more dangerous. Complications such as fatal distress exhaustion, prolonged dilation, failure to progress could continue for 24 hours or longer without pain relief or medical interventions. Modern medicine handles many issues that prehistoric people simply could not. Breech births, where the baby enters feet first. Umbilical cord prolapse, cutting off oxygen to the baby. Placental abruption, where the placenta detaches prematurely. Obstructed labor, where the baby's head becomes stuck. Shoulder dystocia, where shoulders lodge behind the pelvic bone. Without doctors, tools, or surgical options, most of these situations resulted in death for either mother, baby, or both. Even in normal deliveries, prehistoric women faced one of the most common killers of mothers worldwide, postpartum hemorrhage. After birth, the uterus must contract to stop bleeding. If it failed to contract properly, blood loss could be rapid and fatal within minutes. No blood transfusions, no foreign fluids, no emergency surgery. Bleeding was often unstoppable. Even successful deliveries left women highly vulnerable to postpartum infections. Internal tearing opened pathways for bacteria. Unsterile hands and tools introduced dangerous microbes. Placental fragments left inside caused deadly sepsis. The prehistoric environment was filled with infectious threats. Soil bacteria, animal waste, contaminated water, insect-borne pathogens. Many women died days or weeks after delivery from infections we can easily treat today with antibiotics. Despite all dangers, prehistoric women likely weren't always alone. Older, experienced women acted as early midwives. Knowledge was passed orally from mother to daughter, generation after generation. Midwives may have used basic techniques, gentle massage to assist positioning, herbal teas to encourage contractions, clean animal sinew or plant fibers to tie umbilical cords, fire-heated blades, or flint for cutting cords still. Even the most skilled midwife lacked the tools to resolve major complications. For women who survived delivery, the aftermath could leave permanent damage. Torn perineal tissues, fistulas between vagina and rectum or bladder, pelvic organ prolapse, chronic pain. These injuries could cause lifelong disability, making further pregnancies even riskier. Modern maternal mortality rates, roughly 10 to 20 deaths per 100,000 live births. Prehistoric estimates, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 deaths per 100,000 births in some regions. 1 in every 10 deliveries may have resulted in the mother's death. For the infant, up to 50% of newborns died before reaching age 5. The evolutionary trade-off was brutal but necessary. Larger brains equals higher intelligence. Narrow pelvis equals upright walking. Without constant evolutionary selection for women able to survive narrow, dangerous deliveries, the human species may not have persisted. Every successful delivery was the result of both luck and selective survival. Survival odds also depended on where the woman lived. Tropical environments, more parasites and infectious diseases. Cold climates, higher risk of hypothermia during winter births. Mountain regions, altitude-related complications with oxygen delivery. Some regions may have experienced worse outcomes simply due to climate and terrain. Unlike modern sterile delivery rooms, prehistoric births likely occurred inside basic shelters made of animal hides and sticks in caves or rock overhangs. On the ground, sometimes covered with animal skins or leaves, clean water was scarce. Blood, waste, and fluids mixed with dirt and bacteria-laden surfaces. Birth was both feared and spiritually significant. Some groups likely had fertility rituals or protective charms. Elder women may have performed chants or offered herbal incense. Special birth symbols may have been carved into shelters or stones. But no ritual could prevent physical complications. Surviving older women, those who successfully navigated multiple deliveries, became invaluable, teaching young women assisting as midwives, monitoring signs of labor complications. Their knowledge increased group survival odds, one of the key drivers behind the so-called grandmother hypothesis in human evolution. Even after birth, danger continued. Uncontrolled bleeding, infection, milk supply issues, infant failure to latch and feed. The first 24 to 48 hours determined whether both mother and infant would live. For every child who lived, dozens of pregnancies had failed before them. Every successful delivery was a monumental victory against nature itself, hard-won, precarious, and never guaranteed. In prehistoric times, the moment a child was born marked the beginning of a completely new survival struggle. The odds were brutal. The newborn was fragile, defenseless, susceptible to every threat, fully dependent on adults. The first months, even the first hours, were often the most dangerous period of life. Simply keeping a baby alive in the Stone Age required incredible effort, constant vigilance, and luck. Anthropologists estimate that prehistoric infant mortality rates were likely between 30% to 50%. In some regions, possibly even higher. Of all children born, many would never reach their first birthday. The causes were countless: infections, malnutrition, birth injuries, exposure to cold accidents, dehydration, parasites, congenital defects. Most families experience loss multiple times during their lives. Without formula or bottles, survival depended entirely on the mother's ability to produce breast milk, provides nutrition perfectly balanced for the infant's needs, delivers antibodies to help fight infections, supplies hydration in dangerous environments. Breastfeeding could continue for 2 to 4 years, spacing out pregnancies and improving survival rates. But even breastfeeding had its dangers. Maternal malnutrition could reduce milk supply. Breast infections could endanger both mother and infant. If the mother died during or after birth, the baby's survival odds plummeted. If a mother could not breastfeed, other lactating women in the group sometimes wet nursed the child. Cooperative child rearing was crucial for infant survival. Shared childcare reduced orphan mortality and allowed sick or weak mothers time to recover. As children grew and began weaning, they were introduced to mashed foods, broths, and softened plants. Improperly prepared or contaminated foods triggered diarrhea, often fatal from dehydration. Weaning too early or too late could both increase mortality. Infants were highly vulnerable to respiratory infections, pneumonia, bronchitis, diarrheal diseases, leading to rapid dehydration, skin infections. Open sores led to sepsis. Intestinal parasites from contaminated water and food. Malaria. In endemic regions, insect bites, spreading infections or triggering allergic reactions. Even minor illnesses could escalate rapidly without medical care. Cleanliness was extremely difficult to maintain. No diapers. Babies likely wore animal skins or were kept naked. Waste disposal was basic, increasing bacterial contamination. Water sources were rarely sterile. Every feeding, every touch, every exposure carried infection risks. Babies couldn't regulate body temperature efficiently. Hypothermia set in quickly during cold nights. Overheating occurred easily during hot days. To survive, infants were carried constantly in skin-to-skin slings or wraps, kept near fires during cold seasons, swaddled in animal hides, fur, or plant fibers. Entire groups adjusted sleeping arrangements to protect infants from cold. Babies made noise, often attracting predators. Lions, wolves, hyenas, bears, large birds of prey. Campsites were positioned carefully to avoid predator trails. Babies were rarely left alone, even for moments. Fire remained a critical tool for newborn survival. Heat source, predator deterrent, food sterilization. Insect repellent groups that failed to master fire likely lost far more infants. Many prehistoric groups were highly mobile, following animal herds, seeking seasonal plants, avoiding predator zones, chasing weather patterns. Infants were carried for miles every day, on mothers' backs, in slings across torsos, in simple cradle boards, falls. Slips or drops were common risks during these long migrations. Loss of infants was devastating but common. Groups learned from repeated failures. Safer birthing locations, cleaner feeding tools, knowledge of herbal medicines, better foraging strategies. These slow adaptations improved group survival over generations. Only the strongest, genetically and situationally, survived to adulthood, those resistant to infections. Those with strong respiratory systems, those born into well-fed, stable families. Those fortunate enough to avoid accidents and predators. This intense selection pressure helped shape the biological resilience of modern humans. Grandmothers often became critical for infant survival, watching babies while mothers foraged, sharing food and resources, teaching young mothers survival knowledge. Their support allowed mothers to recover and balance care with other essential tasks. Parents, especially mothers, had no rest, monitoring every breath and sound, sleeping lightly to react instantly, shielding babies from fires. Animals, insects, and weather. Any lapse could prove fatal instantly. The first year was the deadliest. If a child reached 1 year, survival odds improved dramatically. Mobility allowed infants to better regulate body temperature. Stronger immune systems handled many minor infections, but even then, danger remained throughout early childhood. The brutal reality. In the Stone Age, simply being born was not enough. Keeping babies alive, day after day, season after season, was a full-time battle against a hostile world. In the prehistoric world, survival wasn't a one-time victory. Every day after birth was a continuation of an unforgiving battle. For mothers, the constant struggle now shifted from pregnancy and delivery to keeping their infants alive, feeding themselves, caring for older children, avoiding predators, supporting the group, and while doing all this, many women were also preparing for their next pregnancy. Prehistoric motherhood often involved constant reproduction, short gaps between pregnancies, overlapping caregiving for multiple young children. A mother might be nursing an infant, weaning a toddler, carrying another pregnancy, foraging with children at her side, physically, emotionally, and nutritionally. This was an enormous toll. Each pregnancy drained. Iron stores calcium from bones and teeth. Protein reserves without adequate recovery time. Anemia worsened, bones became brittle. Teeth decayed and broke, general fatigue deepened. Many prehistoric women lost teeth or developed skeletal problems by their 30s. Nursing infants consumed enormous energy. Producing breast milk burned an extra 400 to 600 calories daily. Malnourished mothers often struggled to keep up supply. Women often foraged while breastfeeding on the move. Infants strapped to chests, backs, or hips, constant balancing of feeding and working. There was no separation between childcare and survival work. Once walking, children remained vulnerable for years, prone to wandering into danger, curious about toxic plants. Easily injured falling on rocks or into rivers, mothers trained toddlers from infancy. Which plants to avoid, how to spot dangerous animals, what sounds signaled predators, but one moment of distraction could lead to irreversible tragedy. Even after surviving infancy, children faced continuous hazards. Predators, wolves, lions, bears, venomous creatures, snakes, spiders, scorpions, parasites, intestinal worms, lice, fleas, infectious diseases, dysentery, pneumonia, malaria. Drowning in rivers or lakes every year of life was another narrow escape. Mothers became key figures in maintaining shelter insulation, fire maintenance, clothing repair, gathering materials for warmth, sudden weather shifts, especially cold snaps, put children at extreme risk of hypothermia, frostbite, respiratory infections. Beyond nature, other humans pose serious threats, raiding parties from rival groups, abductions, competition over hunting grounds. Mothers sometimes had to flee with children during attacks or stand defenseless as conflict erupted around them. Entire families could vanish in intergroup conflicts. Children were trained young to forage, recognize safe versus dangerous plants, read animal tracks. Build basic shelters, start and maintain fire survival knowledge was life insurance. Children who didn't learn fast enough often didn't survive long. The grandmother hypothesis comes into full effect here. Grandmothers helped care for multiple grandchildren, freed up young mothers to continue foraging or recover physically. This shared responsibility dramatically improved survival odds for all family members. Moving camp was a constant logistical nightmare for mothers, packing tools, food, water, infants, toddlers navigating rough terrain, coordinating travel around weather shifts and animal migrations. Children slowed travel speed and increased vulnerability during migrations. Prehistoric motherhood was not just physical. Fear of infant loss, witnessing other children die, anxiety about food shortages, helplessness during plagues or injury. Emotional resilience became essential for daily functioning. Many early societies developed rituals around motherhood, fertility charms, protective symbols for infants, ritual offerings for healthy births, ceremonies for lost children. These spiritual systems provided mothers with some psychological relief in a world of constant danger. Archaeological remains reveal healed fractures on women's bones, dental wear from long-term nutritional stress, signs of severe anemia, multiple pregnancies based on pelvic changes. These women were battle-worn by middle age. Even mothers who survived multiple births faced steep odds. Average life expectancy at birth, approximately 30 years if surviving childhood. Possible lifespan into 40s or 50s. Very rare individuals lived into their 60s. The toll of continuous reproduction and physical labor shortened most women's lives significantly. For surviving mothers, the cycle was endless. Give birth, raise child while pregnant again, recover briefly, repeat. Every pregnancy added more risk. Every child required constant supervision. Every day demanded physical, emotional, and mental sacrifice. This was the reality for prehistoric mothers. A lifetime of continuous danger raising children in the face of starvation, predators, and disease, carrying the future of the species on fragile shoulders. And even after surviving pregnancy, childbirth, infancy, and early motherhood, no one was truly safe. Most modern humans live decades after their final pregnancy. Prehistoric women rarely had that luxury. Continuous reproduction, physical labor, accidents, and starvation took a devastating toll on their bodies long before old age. Every pregnancy drained physical resources: iron for blood production, calcium for fetal bones, protein for tissue growth. Without modern nutrition, prehistoric women often entered each pregnancy weaker than the last. Over a lifetime, a woman might have 8 to 12 pregnancies. Of those, only 3 to 5 children might survive long-term. Repeated childbirths without proper recovery increase risk of internal injuries, uterine rupture, pelvic, organ prolapse, chronic anemia, severe joint and bone weakening. Calcium depletion led to fragile bones, high fracture risk, spinal compression, stooped posture. Skeletons of prehistoric women often show signs of early onset osteoporosis. Tooth decay and loss were common. Acidic diets, poor enamel maintenance, vitamin deficiencies, gum disease. By middle age, many women had lost significant numbers of teeth. Dental infections could easily lead to fatal sepsis. Chronic stress altered brain chemistry. Long-term cortisol elevation, sleep disruption, anxiety, depression, Emotional breakdowns were common after repeated infant losses or near-death births. Continuous childbearing could lead to uterine prolapse, rectal and bladder fistulas, incontinence. Some women lived the rest of their lives with permanent injury following difficult deliveries. Skeletal remains show deformed spines, worn hips and knees, crushed vertebrae, stress fractures and leg bones, flattened pelvic structures from multiple births. These physical signatures match the lifelong cumulative damage of prehistoric motherhood. Daily survival inflicted its own injuries on top of pregnancy. Falls while foraging, animal attacks, accidents near fires, carrying heavy loads over rough terrain. Many women had to continue working through serious untreated injuries. The cumulative effects meant that by age 35 to 40, many women were physically aged beyond modern 60-year-olds. Joint pain was constant, strength declined sharply. Injury recovery slowed. Many died during or shortly after these years. The brutal numbers: average prehistoric life expectancy at birth, 30 to 35 years. If surviving childhood, life into late 30s or early 40s, rare individuals lived into 50s or 60s. Often elders with extreme survival, luck, continuous reproduction was a key reason women rarely reached old age. Beyond natural causes, many women suffered injuries from intergroup raids, domestic violence, animal attacks. Some skeletal remains show skull fractures, defensive arm injuries, blunt trauma. Violence added to an already overwhelming survival burden. The women who survived all of this passed on genetic resilience, high pain tolerance, strong bone structures, disease resistance. Their descendants, us, carry these adaptations forward today. The cycle never stopped. 1, start pregnancy. 2, face starvation and disease. 3, survive delivery. 4, raise child amid constant danger. 5, repeat pregnancy. Over and over until the body simply could not continue. This was prehistoric motherhood, a life of near constant sacrifice, endless physical damage, heartbreak and loss as routine experiences. Modern humans rarely comprehend just how dangerous basic reproduction used to be. Every child alive was the product of generational blood, pain, and endurance. Everything you've seen in this documentary, the dangers, the trauma, the survival strategies, they weren't just part of ancient history. They shaped what it means to be human. Our modern bodies, minds, and reproductive systems are still deeply marked by hundreds of thousands of years of prehistoric motherhood. The only reason humans became dominant as a species is our brain. But that brain created an evolutionary crisis. Bigger brains meant larger baby heads. Upright walking meant narrower birth canals. This created the uniquely difficult childbirth humans still face today. It's why human babies are born early compared to other animals, when their skulls are still soft and underdeveloped. Evolution solution: birth humans early, then raise them longer. Unlike almost every other mammal, humans require years of intensive caregiving. A baby horse walks within hours. A human baby is helpless for years. This means mothers must invest enormous time and energy. The group must support child-rearing, families must develop long-term memory. Teaching and planning, this long childhood helped us evolve. Culture, language, storytelling, group traditions, moral systems. None of this is possible without long-term maternal and social care. One of the most important theories in evolutionary biology, human women live long after menopause, a trait almost unique in the animal kingdom. Why? Grandmothers dramatically increase survival rates, shared food, watched children, passed down medicinal knowledge, protected pregnant daughters, post-reproductive women kept groups alive. Evolution selected for intergenerational cooperation. Research shows women have higher resistance to long-term psychological stress, better emotional multitasking, greater memory for relational and environmental detail. These traits aren't random. They're direct results of ancestral motherhood under dangerous conditions. Your ancestors evolved to track multiple children, sense subtle threats, read group dynamics, remember medicinal plants. These traits are passed through generations, right down to you. With all our technology, hospitals, C-sections, neonatal care, human childbirth is still one of the most dangerous events the body goes through. Why hasn't evolution fixed it? Because the trade-offs are locked in. You can't grow a bigger baby head without endangering the mother. You can't widen the pelvis much more without ruining upright walking. So we live in a permanent compromise. Modern medicine props up a system that evolution couldn't smooth out. Another product of prehistoric survival. Deep emotional bonding between mother and child, oxytocin-driven attachment. Emotional pain from infant loss, these weren't just feelings. They were survival tools. Babies who were loved were protected. Mothers who grieved learned from danger. Attachment was biology, not luxury. It takes a village to raise a child. That's not poetic. It's prehistoric fact. The reason humans evolved language, social norms, cooperation, and even morality was because motherhood required help. No one could do it alone. Not then, not now. Prehistoric mothers and grandmothers didn't just keep babies alive. They were the first teachers. How to treat fever, what plants to eat, what animal sounds to fear. Where the water source was, what rituals ensured safety, this oral knowledge became the first cultural infrastructure. Without it, written history would never exist. Hunting gets the headlines. Spears, mammoths, fire. But survival, real survival, came from the women who gave birth, fed children, made shelter, shared food, passed on memory, buried the dead, evolution, selected for the quiet heroes. The ones who brought life into a world of death. If you're alive today, it means every single one of your female ancestors survived pregnancy. They raised at least one child who lived. That child passed down their genes through thousands of years to you, through starvation, through ice ages, through animal attacks, disease, miscarriages, and childbirth trauma. Someone like you made it again and again for over 300,000 years. And that's what makes you human.